welcome everyone back to the Dynamic Config Brigade meeting. It has basically, since our last demonstration, a successful demo in various events, we have kind of paused a little bit on the meeting, and today I'm glad that the Dynamic Config Brigade trusted me to host the meeting together with the support from all of you, and let's resume the activities that for this brigade. Yes, the day 2 days ago, actually, we had a preliminary conversation with ON.Lab and with on the what we should do next for the Dynamic Config Brigade. And here I'm going to present a list of work items that we collected during our previous conversation, and also some of our past experience using Dynamic Config and data service and Yang tools to support the various public demos and application. And also having the feedback from Thomas and Yuta and Toru on the requirements. So I'm going to present this list here, and then we can discuss about the priorities and what we should do for the next two releases. Okay, I think I need to move this around. How should I minimize that?
I think the little orange arrow can move that to the side. I presume you're talking.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the first work item that I see was the Redcom productization. So basically, there are many events that actually uses Redcom as a primary northbound interface for the SDN controller. And the first thing that we should put together is to have the Redcom to integrate with the new dynamic config services. Because as of before Redcom implementation actually is bound with the original YMS, which is now phased out and switched to dynamic config. So we need to do that in order to make Redcom fully work with the dynamic config. As of today, from Henry's feedback, the most of the functions like get, put, post, and delete for Redcom are all done and working with dynamic config. The patch it still needs to be implemented, and also there are a bunch of bug fixes that are showing up here and there, which also needs to be addressed in the code. Aside from that, on the Redcom side, there's also a support for RPC, which I think it's very important to address, and also notification support for Redcom. It needs to be there. So all of the items that are down here would need support Redcom for a very good functional demo.
Okay, just a quick clarification here. So the RESTconf here is talking about the RESTconf on a northbound API, basically the RESTconf that's acting as a server towards the external entities like orchestrators and other things like that that need to be talking to ONOS via RESTconf. That's correct, right?
Yes. Yeah. But I think this is also on the southbound as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
So RESTconf is both on the northbound and southbound, right? Henry, you can add more information if you.
So I know that we plan to do RESTconf on a southbound as well, but I thought, okay, so perhaps this is where I'm mistaken. So on a north, it's set up in a capacity of effectively a server which responds to requests from outside, and on the south, it's set up in the capacity of a client which needs to make requests of other things to the south, like devices and network elements. Is that correct? Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So this item, the RESTconf productization, I think it would be because we already have a good development on that. It will be very, I think, very important to have it bring it up to a usable state with all the supports here. The next item. The next item is the enhancement in dynamic config services, as we discussed in several occasions before. So first item is we perhaps need to improve the performance by generating consolidated events for let's say a data node tree write or delete, instead of generating numerous notification for all of the attributes in a node tree. This will help a lot with the use of the notification. And there's also this, Thomas, you put sharding and performance optimization, right? And also to allow us to support concurrent access to the data nodes in dynamic config store, and to help support the atomic transactions and some rollback mechanism to ensure the consistency. And there are two practical questions that actually we found during the use of the dynamic config is, firstly, is what we should do with the data node persistency, how it interacts with the database, right? And another very practical issue that we found is, suppose we have an input JSON in a particular order for the node data nodes, according to, let's say, YARN spec, right? And when we have an output,
oh,
yes.
hello.
Ivar, are you there? Still I'm not sure what happened to audio. Oh, I think he.
Okay.
Oh, he went offline. Oh, okay. So we may need to wait for him to rejoin.
Okay. Right. So while we are waiting, just echo what Ahua mentioned about the last a problem that our limitation is that, because our observation is that the order that we write to the dynamic config may not be the same order as the input order that's specified, say, from a JSON data node.
Yeah. Yes.
Order. I mean the sibling.
Right. Because
the siblings. Okay.
Right. Yeah. That's because the JSON, the sort of the JSON standard, respects the order only in the arrays. and everywhere else in the object,
Right.
order of properties is just basically a dictionary, which the order is effectively non-determinate.
Right. You see, right. However, even arrays, like even the siblings of the arrays, are not are somehow intertwined with other data nodes. Sarah.
Yes, Henry, we know about this. So the problem is that
Yeah.
in the primitive, like the base data types that we are using, that don't respect the order. So that's why it is
Right.
not preserved.
The,
So I'm working on it. I can fix that.
good.
Oh,
Good. Thank you.
okay, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, because it's not so much of a cosmetic that we love to see. The post, I mean the output of RESTconf get is identical of the input of RESTconf post. It's not only that. Right now, what I'm trying to highlight is that even since the array nodes are not in order, I need to sort in the JSON serializer to sort the data nodes. That slows down the JSON serializer performance, right?
For sure, yeah, that makes sense. I did not realize that
yeah.
arrays were mixed up. Yeah, that's clearly not good.
Yeah.
So it is the same fix that will fix both. Very basic primitive that we are using, it's a map. Everywhere else it is a linked hash map. So we just lost the order. So in the primitive we need to fix it.
Okay.
And so you're working with Jordan on this?
Yeah, I will.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
It looks like Iwa is back.
Okay.
Though his audio is still not registering as a...
Hello?
Hello.
Oh.
Hello. Hey, Thomas, sorry. Looks like my computer suddenly got disconnected.
Yeah, we figured.
Right. Let me see. Can you still see my screen?
Actually, I do not. No.
Okay.
You may need to reshare.
Okay, give me just a second. Let me see if I can share.
Yeah, we can see your desktop right now.
You can see my desktop. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. Yeah, and so Henry already explained to us the inconsistent input and output data node order in JSON.
Right. So I think this would be a very useful thing to implement and well, greatly improve the reading capability of the output code from dynamic config. Okay, so the question that I was asking the crowd is, what are the additional items that you see under these two categories?
So for me, primarily, just to clarify, the sharding and performance optimization, it should be done opportunistically because I think we first need to make things work, and then we can make them. Secondly, we can then make them work faster and more optimally. So I would not necessarily prioritize this above other things. So clearly, the consolidated events are extremely important. The support for the RPC, just in general, just the RPC mechanism inside the Yang tools, and clearly the network adapters need to be provided. And I think the consolidated events may have some relationship to at least to transactions, but I'll let Sithara figure out whether that is the case or not. And I think you're absolutely right. About the persistency. I was assuming that since we were using consistent structures, that there would be an option like with all of the other consistent distributed primitives. There is always an option to make them persistent. So perhaps that can easily be enabled. But if not, then we need to provide a solution for this, certainly.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
And the atomic transaction and rollback mechanism, again, I I think it's very important functionality, but it's I think that if he cannot make it part of the release, I think it's okay if it goes to the next M release. At least in my view. Now, of course, there may be use cases which heavily depend on this, but I'm trying to make sure that we do it kind of in a progression, that we handle the basic functionality first, and then we can add the more advanced functionality later.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So like this performance optimization, we should do that on the occasions that where we see it has to be done in order to not affect the use of those tools, right? But otherwise, we can do it from case by case perspective. So the rest of the items in the dynamic config store would be pretty important to have.
Yes.
I guess Cetera, we could talk like after that to figure out what would be the first thing to do here.
Sure.
And great.
I have a question. Thomas, do you have any pointers to the information regarding how to persist a consistent map onto a database? Is there any the wiki page I can Google? ONOS wiki page?
I'm not sure about a wiki page, but I think in the Java documentation for the storage subsystem, the storage service has factory methods for instantiating the different types of distributed primitives, effectively like builders. And then those the consistent ones often have with persistence qualifier, and simply enable it during the construction or an instantiation of the data structure. But I don't know if that's the case. Clearly, this is something that would have to be done by the store itself, right? Because the store is the only component that sees the underlying distributed primitives.
Oh, okay. I'll see. So I'll read some Java doc, right, on the store source code, right?
Yes.
To see how it's
it would be
used.
on we need to it would be on not necessarily Java doc on the store, but it would be the Java doc on the distributed primitives which the store uses, and that the primitive is usually created with assistance of the storage service. Look there, and also do not hesitate to contact Jordan Alterman, who's the distributed systems authority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So then moving on to the next page, there are other items that we need to consider, right? The first in this page is this about YARN tools and the YARN runtime. What we should perhaps think to do is some necessary support for YARN 1.1, because right in our past practice with using the latest IETF models, right? There's a bunch of items in YARN 1.1 spec that is currently not supported by the YARN tool and runtime. I listed like just a few quick examples like actions, and also the identity ref appearance in a union structure. Those are currently not there with the YARN tools, and today we just simply comment them out in the YARN model, but I suppose that those needs to be there. And also this is probably also relating to the support of OpenConfig models. I'm not exactly sure what YARN version this OpenConfig model is using, but if they are using YARN 1.1, that probably also needs to be done.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and also there are a few bug fixes here and there. I think Henry discovered some. There will need to be we'll need to talk to Gaurav and the YARN tools team to sort out. And the next three items, Thomas, if you do you mind if you can like share your idea a bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
So currently the Yang compiler we have a Maven plugin so that it can be compiled from Maven-based projects. We have a bug plugin so that it can be compiled from within bug-based projects, which includes ONOS. But we would also like to add ability to dynamically compile Yang models at runtime. And the reason for this is to enable use case where ONOS can discover a device and via netconf or some other pre-configured address, and then can have a conversation with that device about which Yang models are supported by the device. Some devices are actually capable of sending the Yang sources for the models which they support, and
right.
This would allow the ONOS device discovery to collect all of the sources for the Yang models that the device supports and compile them as a module, as a sort of a model comprising of all the different modules supported by the device, and then dynamically, effectively discover the data, configuration the data that the device has. It would also allow runtime service to have users compile models on demand without having to set up a development environment. Basically, you could just drag and drop a bunch of Yang files onto the UI effectively or through CLI, and then it would automatically produce a bundle, a Yang model application effectively, right?
Okay. So Thomas, what would you see the time frame to support this? Is it in a immediate need for that, or
no? I think this is just something. It should be if it can be done. I don't think anything else depends on it. I would like to be able to demonstrate this capability in Loon release, but I don't think anything that depends on it directly in the Loon release itself. So I don't think that's something that needs to be prioritized early on in the release cycle.
Okay, yeah. So that means that we will probably look into that and figure out what we should do with that. But it does not have to catch the Loon release, right?
Well, I would like it to be the capability to be available in the Loon release, but what I was saying is that there is nothing else that depends on it. So which means that it can.
Oh, okay.
We can wait till the end.
Got it.
And this is
Got it.
Yeah, the enabling work in the Yang tool chain is already happened, I think, or at least is being worked on, and the integration with the ONOS itself, right? Because there's component in there that needs to be integrated to integrate this into ONOS from the generic platform. That's something I could provide assistance with, or at least convey more specific ideas what I think needs to be available.
Sure.
And again, initially, it's something that's very handy primarily for demonstration, because in the Loon release, we will not be actually discovering the devices dynamically and doing all of that stuff. That'll probably come in M release. The other item, which is the OpenConfig, the thought here is OpenConfig currently uses just Yang 1.0. And it actually OpenConfig explicitly uses a reduced set of the Yang language constructs just to keep things simple, and it's a set of models which are oriented towards basically service providers or network operators.
Right.
And so they're well recognized. They're used by Google, and so it would be excellent if ONOS could demonstrate that we can process, or we can actually make available all of the OpenConfig models pre-compiled as a sort of, basically you can just enable them from as an ONOS extension, and you don't have to do anything special. That would
So basically, to allow them to use like ONOS Yang tools to compile those models, right? And put it as a okay.
Yeah.
That I consider. Yeah.
Yeah, what I would like to do, how I would like to have it set up is so actually when you build ONOS, by the time when you're done building ONOS, just like you have all of the applications for drivers and all of those things built and available for activation as part of the default ONOS package, it would be the same for the OpenConfig model, that all the different modules would be available, and you could just enable the support for OpenConfig either as one big bundle or potentially as individual parts of the OpenConfig. I don't
Okay.
sense, but one of those things.
Yeah.
Now,
sure. So basically, that involves the compilation of those models to a successful end, right? And then, but the actual support of those models will be done by the community.
Oh yeah.
Depending on which
exactly. That's really all it means. Is just make sure we can build the OpenConfig models, compile them, and then actually compile them as part of ONOS build, and that's it. Yes.
Right.
And then the last item, the device config synchronizer. Let me give a little background on this. So, you already talked about the RESTconf adapter. We also, as part of the demo for ONS last year, we developed a prototype of a netconf adapter. Now, this is only the southbound component, which is the one that acts as a client, talking to the network elements as servers. And that netconf adapter also, for the demonstration, was receiving the information that should be going to the devices from the dynamic config store. We need to have something. We need to enhance this, the netconf protocol, to be capable of bidirectional transfer, which means it needs to be able to learn the intended configuration from the dynamic configuration and apply to the network elements, meaning from north to south. But it also needs to be able to query the device configuration and convey it up to the dynamic configuration store, which is from south to north. And the device config synchronizer is envisioned here as a component which sits between the adapter and the dynamic configuration store, and can drive the activity which makes sure that the device has the configuration that it should have. Very much like what our flow rule providers do today. The flow rule providers make sure that the devices have the flow rules which they should have and no other. So the synchronization is the synchronization part of this is the part that is reconciling what is there versus what should be there.
Okay, so basically, it make sure that the view from the dynamic config store is matches what is in the device, right?
Yes, and preferably this would be protocol agnostic, meaning that it does not directly engage with the netconf protocol, but it could be interfacing potentially with multiple southbound adapters such as RESTconf, netconf, and potentially GNMI or something else. Preferably, right? If for some reason I'm oversimplifying this and doing such thing is not really easily possible, then we can certainly, at least initially for Rune release, make it part of the netconf southbound adapter, and then later on we can figure out if there is a way to disaggregate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one question I sort of have is that, so is this dynamic config synchronizer going to be something listening to dynamic config events? So strictly speaking, something outside of dynamic config, interacting with dynamic config?
Correct.
Right. So one thing I'm wondering if in that direction is that, so in the case of flow rule store has sort of a state for each flow entry, whether it's accepted state and whether it has been synchronized all the way down to the state, pending add and added state. So if it's gonna be outside dynamic config, then this device config synchronizer has its own store mechanism to store the synchronization state.
Yes, yes. So good point. So I didn't mean it outside that way. So let me clarify. So with the like MD South, for example, in with the which is basically a big tree store, very similar to what the device store service does. It consolidates all of the information in big logical tree store. What's envisioned is that for each device there is two subtrees. One is the actual, and one is the applied. And even in netconf and yang, right, you have a operational versus operational state versus the configuration. And so the thought here is that device config synchronizer would rely on the dynamic configuration store service to maintain both, and simply be the logic which drives the reconciliation. Did that answer your question, Yuta?
So in a sense, this device config synchronizer will be reading whatever that is on the device, writing to the dynamic configure store on the operational tree, and trying to reconcile that with the intended tree or staging tree or whatever.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Yeah, that makes sense.
So from a priority point of view, Thomas, what would be your thoughts on should we make it available in the L release? Or?
Well, I think in order to continue to be, so some parts of it, to some level, I think it needs to be part of the Loon release. But and the reason I say that is because during the ONS demos, when we demonstrated sort of just the north to south flow of information, where you could push some JSON using the RESTconf adapter, they would get stored in dynamic configuration store. And then the netconf component, we have the active netconf component and passive one. And the active one would be effectively in place of the device config synchronizer, would pick up that information from config store and pass it to the passive one, which would then convey it to the device via netconf and XML. So we demonstrated that, but we couldn't demonstrate the upward flow. So I think it would be good to demonstrate the upward flow. So at least we should do the part that enables both the north to south smooth flow and south to north smooth flow. And maybe we can leave the reconciliation logic, could be potentially left for M release. But I think we need to have the component in place, that layer in place, which is effectively the active part, which is actively monitoring the store to trigger it to push the stuff to the devices, and vice versa, which actively monitors the devices to be able to store their operational state in the store. That part I think we ought to have in L release, and at least married to the at least coupled to the net or integrated to the netconf adapter. And then the reconciliation logic, which may be more complicated, and which anyway would depend on some of the more rudimentary functionality, could be done later.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm clear. So another question that I have is with respect to netconf. So my understanding is netconf is also part of this dynamic, considered as part of the dynamic config brigade, right?
Correct.
I'm just not that aware of the features that is required on the netconf side. So can anyone raise and clarify?
Yeah, so I can probably describe it. So we need something to be able to relay the netconf configuration to the devices. We actually have the netconf subcontroller, which is just a very simple engine that can manage the netconf sessions, and which has an API through which you can effectively push strings of configuration data to the device. The various netconf verbs. So that can be used completely standalone. As a matter of fact, there are drivers that use it completely outside of the Yang toolchain and dynamic configuration. And so for the ONS demo, there was a prototype, and that uses that netconf engine to integrate it with the device configuration subsystem with the store. And so that's the work effectively that touches the device config synchronizer. So we have the passive component is the netconf engine, which we already have, and I think which we could for the most part use as is. And then we have the active part, which is the part that sits between, which is effectively the device config synchronizer, which sits between the store and the netconf subcontroller, the netconf engine. And so, so effectively, if we could provide the base functionality for the net device config synchronizer, formerly known as the netconf active piece, that would
okay, so that the device config synchronizer would cover what we need in order to support netconf, right?
Exactly. And maybe if you can add another item in here. So ideally to be protocol agnostic, but I think at least integrated with netconf southbound.
Okay.
And we could and we should look for currently I know that this was not staffed by either the team in India or by the team in Canada, but we should look for, I think it should be done under the umbrella of Dynamic Configuration Brigade, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done by those teams, right? We can figure out who needs to do it, and if you can get ideally we can get other collaborators as part of the brigade that could step in. I know that Aaron was doing from Fujitsu was doing that because of the urgency of the ONS demos, but I think he's driving a different project, and so it might be better if he find somebody else so that he can continue the that he's on.
Yeah, that would be ideal. That's also what I understood. Aaron has contributed a great part of the netconf side, and it would be good to have someone or him or someone to help continue working on this part.
I might be able to help out. So maybe I'll need to first of all I need to understand the existing code base and so on. So maybe I'll start firing question emails and so on.
Oh, that would be excellent. Yeah, I can certainly provide you some of the background, and again, keep in perspective that the existing code base. It should not be viewed as a restriction, right? Because it was done to enable the demos, and so. But if you could be able to help in that area, that would be ideal, actually.
Yeah, we should definitely be able to share some things. To complete the netconf compliance, we actually need two stores, right? One is the proposed configuration and one is the actual configuration. So that piece is still missing. So which would in the time crunch we couldn't put it together. So that would be a starting point for the synchronization.
Yeah. So particularly, I mean, on the netconf engine side, you need to support for intended config, right?
Yep.
And configuration and actual configuration. All right. And how about netconf RPC? Do we also support a netconf RPC?
I thought I thought that the subcontroller does support it, but I could be mistaken. The existing netconf subcontroller, I mean, it's basically just conveying the XML data, right? So it's a question of whether we can actually serialize the RPC requests, which we ought to be able to serialize. And then other than that, we just pass it onto the device, and the device on a southbound does what it needs to do to respond to the RPC request and gives us a response.
Right. Yeah, I think Henry, you raised this offline conversation, right? Do you have other thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think our framework, provided by dynamic config and Yang runtime should help support the netconf RPC, right, together with RESTconf RPC. It just probably we need the netconf adapter, right, to be able to receive RPC request and then handle it in a similar fashion as our RESTconf server, right?
Okay.
Will do, right? Yeah, that my understanding is that.
But I think Henry. So in this case, when we talk about netconf, we're talking only in netconf in a southbound capacity, where it acts as a client, which issues the RPC requests. It does not handle the RPC requests. So I want to make sure that the netconf adapter initially is constrained purely to the one responsible for southbound interactions. So we don't really need to handle anything there. We just need to make sure we can properly serialize the data, which represents the RPC request, and deserialize the data responses, which are the output of those RPC requests as they're executed on the device.
Okay. I see. Yeah, that in that regard, it's very light on the rest. Yeah, the netconf right adapter side, basically acting as a client. Yeah, I think we can confirm with Graph, but my understanding is that right now the current Yang runtime is already able to serialize, deserialize the RPC output in the XML codec.
That's my impression as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that probably we don't have to write an item for that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So looking at all the work item, right? If we go back to this one, I think the RESTconf productization and also dynamic config enhancement will definitely be needed in the L release, right? And for the Yang tools, I think Yang tools 2 with the bug fixes. The only thing, so for the Yang 1.1 support, Henry, do you see this would also need to be there in the next in this release?
Yeah, I given right. Yeah, the other one given in particular that the two items, right, we listed, right. These two items should be self-contained, small enough that we can feed right into L release. That will be my yeah understanding. We need to confirm that with the graph.
Okay.
Yeah, but my estimate is that yes, we should be able to do that in L release.
If we can specify it in a strict order of priorities, for me, I would view the OpenConfig support, which uses only 1.0, to be higher on the priority list than the Yang 1.1. From my perspective, I would like to see that first. Clearly, the bug fixes. I'm envisioning that the bug fixes that are there are purely the bug fixes that we encounter when trying to compile various models.
Yes, Thomas, you're right. The bug fixes are not even those bugs are even for support 1.0, right?
Yeah,
I got bugs in augmentation. I got bugs in list, right? Those bugs. I mean, well, probably the bug fixes are in higher priority even than the 1.1 syntax support, I believe. Right?
But with respect to the OpenConfig model, the OpenConfig, as I mentioned, uses Yang 1.0, and it relies on some IETF models. It's some generic parts of what was formerly parts of OpenConfig, but they got pushed out to IETF. And even that, I think those required models require only Yang 1.0. And so which is one of the reasons I would say I would prioritize support for OpenConfig.
Okay.
support for Yang 1.1
Right.
in terms of priority.
Okay. So Thomas, as of today, OpenConfig Yang models have any outstanding compile issues or?
Well, no, we haven't. So we have not tried. We need somebody to basically try to compile that. And then if that works, then we can simply check those models into ONOS codebase and or dynamically download them and then compile them at build time to make them available.
Yeah, so so Henry, I think this OpenConfig is the support of the OpenConfig model. It's pretty like independent work. You take the necessary OpenConfig models and see if it compiles with the Yang tools, and then if it compiles, we add it to the package and then release it.
Exactly. And if it doesn't, right? If it doesn't, then most likely that means there is some bug fixes that need to be fixed. And it is those bug fixes that I would prioritize over introducing Yang 1.1. That's what I meant.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I have got a sharing issue again. Someone just excused me out of the list. So,
okay.
Yeah, but anyhow, I think I was trying to connect it to GoToMeeting. It does not work quite well. But anyhow, I think we are approaching the end. I think I have captured all of the work items in there. So basically, Thomas, from your point of view, the support of the OpenConfig models to basically verify if it compiles with the Yang tools and included in the package. That's even more important than support for Yang 1.1, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the other two items, the device config synchronizer and the live compiler, that as you indicated, it will needs to present a framework in the L release, right? But we do not necessarily need to. Okay.
Yes, and I should be able to help with. I should be able to help with the live compiler, and if Utah can drive the base functionality of the device config synchronizer, I think that would be excellent.
Okay, yeah, that would be really helpful. And okay. So I think we can pretty much cover that in the release timeframe. And in the meantime, for Redcom productization, I think Henry can help with the community and also work together with the community on the support for Redcom. Dynamic config, definitely Cetera will help lead this work. Right? Yeah. Okay, so I think we have a pretty good coverage. And although, Thomas, I still suggest that we may want to call for additional support on from the community who wish to join the Dynamic Config Brigade to work on various items there.
Yes, I think we should, and I will ask David to maybe help us issue a call. I've also recorded today's meeting, so we should be able to share. I will upload it to YouTube, and we should be able to point your colleagues from India to it so that they can see what transpired today since they've missed it.
Yeah.
And also potentially we can use it effectively as a discussion of for those people who might be interested. We can point them to this to illustrate what kind of work we're planning to do for L release, and so that where we're looking for help.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Iwa.
Hello.
Okay, so thank you guys, and hope to see you next time.
If you have time, can we talk about the development scope plan a little bit? Hello.
I'm sorry, Toru, what was that? Can you repeat?
If we have time, can we talk about the development scope and our requirement a little bit? I can show you some of our requirement story in detail.
Yeah. Okay. You to share your requirements. Yeah, certainly.
as we discussed on Tuesday, engine configuration are really interesting. We are developing the transport SDN with ONOS, and we are summarizing some requirements from the perspective of carrier's operation, and that are really related to the young Redcom and dynamic configuration brigade activities. And okay, so I'll share some slides.
Okay, yeah. Can you share your screen?
Yeah. So right now I'm summarizing our requirements from the perspective of carrier operation. So, and actually, I showed all the requirement to ON.Lab before Thomas, and I think Thomas has already our requirements. But I want to I just to confirm if our requirements are inside the development scope of this dynamic configuration brigade or out of scope. And most of our requirements are inside dynamic configuration brigade scope, like modeling language, young modeling language to describe some configuration or generating subsequent protocol and so on. But number of so I'd like to know this number 5 requirement and 6 and number 10.2 are inside the dynamic configuration brigade or not. And the first one is configuration upgrade. So I will.
So Toru.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Toru. So yeah, so this definitely is something that will be important to have, and this is something which the configuration synchronizer is supposed to enable. And that's what when the configuration synchronizer is in place, you can make changes to the from anywhere north to the north, whether it's from some orchestrator or whether it's from a service application, can be making changes to the device configuration using the store APIs. And then the device synchronizer should pick up on those changes and apply or upgrade the configuration of the device itself. That's precisely what it is intended to do. But I think in a Loon release, it's unclear whether the entire synchronization capability be there. I think as we discussed for Loon release, we should have at least the ability to push configuration from north to south and to read configuration from south to north. And that should be, I think, the minimum part that is working. And then after that part is working, then we can start working on the logic to reconcile and or upgrade the configuration. But I see this requirement to be directly corresponding to the configuration synchronizer.
Okay, yeah, I see. Thank you, Thomas. Yeah. And the next one is the transactional upgrade, and I think this this use case will be covered in the M release. Is this correct?
I think so. Yeah, I think this will have to. I think this will have to wait till M release because we cannot do this until all of the other more fundamental functionality is working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also agree.
Yeah, thank you. And how about this program plate? I mean, this is the use case that ONOS controller monitors some power off or power on status of the designated device at regular intervals with like a ping command and so on.
Yes.
And,
okay. Yeah, so I think this is broader in scope than dynamic configuration. If you look at sort of our basic, the ONOS basic architecture diagram, you will find a couple of sort of subsystems in there intended to cover this functionality. One of those is the device discovery. And this is what I mean is by this is something we can actually sweep the network looking for devices that can be managed. And then device adoption, which basically is the process of once such device is found, the process which involves bringing the device into the control domain. and potentially configuring it as the device needs to be configured, whether it's using netconf or other means. So I think this is the functionality described on this slide is clearly partly enabled by the dynamic configuration, but it also requires other pieces in place, other pieces to be in place, specifically some protocol sweep mechanism, which can use pings, SSH, short telnet, whatever you describe in here. And to identify such devices, it will involve integration with the device key subsystem to make sure that we can effectively manage the security and keys to the devices. And then it will clearly then involve the integration with the device provider to make sure that such devices can actually be then integrated into the control domain and then afterwards. So,
okay, yeah, all right.
So I think this actually, I named a couple of pieces in there which are not part of the dynamic configuration, but which are certainly useful and have actually been on a sort of on a long-range roadmap of ONOS from the very beginning. If this is something that that could potentially be worked on, if NTT could help in these areas, that would be great. Like, for example, the device discovery sweep.
Right.
All right, yeah, okay, thank you, Thomas. Oh, I think we don't have enough time. So, next week, I will discuss about the development priority and scope and task and so on. And actually, our tech lead of transport SDN in the communications will come to the US next week. So if we have a time, we'd like to discuss about the requirement development scope and long-term priority and so on sometime next week on Tuesday or Wednesday with this brigade team.
Yeah, but I think so.
If we have time, yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the NTT list of requirements and priorities is a little bit broader than what the dynamic configuration brigade should be concerned with. So there is certainly some overlap and some items that I believe we've discussed today in today's meeting, which should enable a lot of the functionality, or at least some of the functionality required by NTT. But I think there is other work that needs to be happen somewhere else, perhaps in some other brigades, or which needs to be done by NTT or the ONOS platform team that does not fall into it. And I want to make sure that the dynamic configuration brigade stays focused on the dynamic configuration parts, and that does not get distracted by some of the other stuff. So I think next Tuesday we should, when NTT is here in California, we should definitely discuss that with them. But I don't think this whole team needs to be involved in that.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Okay, so I think
yeah, okay.
I think we're over time. I'm gonna have to get out because I have another meeting coming up. So we're gonna have one next week. Is that correct, Aiwa?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for running it, and I guess we'll see each other next week. Is that all right?
Yeah. See you next week, and we're gonna solidify the items and start working on that within the brigade.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.